Love it. The distinguished gentleman is looking quite distinguished today with a fresh haircut, which you will see in a matter of moments. Yeah, we got it. We got some slides right there on screen. We'll start with that slide. I like the pre-production conversation that is happening right here. Woody Fincham is in the house. Give the show a like and a share anywhere you are watching. It's an absolute pleasure, guys, to connect with you here on Real Talk with Keith Smith. If you have questions, join in with the discussion. James Watson, hello. Johnny Ornalis, Kevin Higgins, Scott Thorpe, the commercial broker, Olivia Branch, Dr. Downey, Sarah Hill-Buchensky, Albert Graves, David Donovan in Richmond, Supervisor Rutherford, Dean Russell, Liza Borges, Angie Fink, Laura Fonner, Bellamy Brown, Andre Xavier, Ray Cadell, Tripp Stewart, the real estate investor, Seth Liskey, the commercial investor in Stanton, Michael Plecker, MJ Arquette, Tom Stargell. Your daughter's watching the program. If you want to say anything to Yvonne, say, how are you doing?
It was great pictures you sent this morning. I probably should send them off to Judah to take a look at it. It's cute as heck.
Very nicely done. Kirsty Trickerici watching the program as well. Guys, give it a like, give it a share. We're going to answer some questions today. We're going to have some perspectives, some free-flowing discussion. When the Professor Woody Fincham is in the house, the content is approachable and digestible, undoubtedly. Judah Wickower is the mad scientist on this particular morning, which we appreciate you. And what you did this, he nods his head, yes. You did very well, Judah, adapting on the fly. All right, we can rock and roll when you're ready, ladies and gentlemen. With quite a few people watching the program today. J-Dubs, we're ready for you. Good Wednesday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and this is Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us in our building, the Macklin Building in downtown Charlottesville. A pleasure to connect with you on a wide-ranging, temperature-changing type of day. It starts off in the low 40s. In fact, when I woke up in the 4 o'clock hour, I saw 39 on the thermometer. And then I look, and it's going to get in the mid-70s, a temperature change of 40 degrees, depending on where you live here in Central Virginia. Judah Wickower gets props as the director of the show. Today's program is going to start with assessed values versus actual values. And we will highlight what is a barometer for valuing property that is a trailing indicator, a trailing KPI. Judah Wickower, let's go to the studio camera. Welcome a freshly manicured Keith Smith, not only the haircut, but the mustache.
And I don't have any coffee.
And he's got no coffee today.
This is show 551, and I don't have any coffee, so watch out. I might be shaking a little bit.
Show 551 with no Java for Keith Smith. Woody Fincham, his beard game on point per usual. The professor, as he's been monikered, is in the house. Good Wednesday morning, Keith. I'm excited for this. Data is one of my passions. It's how Woody makes his living. I love data with a passion. Where do you want to start?
I first want to apologize to Judah because he got dumped 21 slides this morning that he needs to go with. Actually, I want to start with, if you don't mind putting up slide 19. So this is Charlottesville. I was asked by the mayor yesterday,
Mayor Lloyd Snook, right down the hall,
which is an honor in itself, to give him some information about Charlottesville, and specifically he was looking for quarter over quarter for 2023. And he wanted to take a look at what the list price was versus the sales price. So on the slides that you guys are looking at, and I'd love Woody to kind of dive into it from his perspective, but you're looking at quarter over quarter from first quarter 2023, and thank you, Woody, for teaching me how to do this, because I always put the third quarter first, and now I have to put the first quarter first. But if you take a look at it, the percentages are pretty tight, right? First quarter, second quarter was 1%. The last quarter was a pretty big jump. There's about 3.5% the sales price versus the list price. But at the second half of those slides is the percentage of cash sales. So that was the three things that the mayor wanted to know. So hopefully I got a little brownie points with the mayor. We'll see how that goes. And but I wanted to kick off and see what Woody thought about it and drive poor Judah nuts by calling out slides he probably hasn't loaded up yet.
I think he's doing it right now, literally. He is doing it right now.
Thank you, Judah. I appreciate that.
Judah's the man. He's got 8 arms and 3 heads right now.
He does.
And more importantly, he puts up with this on a regular basis.
So, Woody, where do you want to start?
The most interesting data that I'm pulling off of this chart is the high amount of cash sales.
Yeah.
It's much higher than I would have assumed, because when you look at the region as a whole, I think we were tracking closer to just under 30%. But Charlottesville is pulling in some serious cash buyers.
Yeah, when we looked at it on Monday, it was kind of like across the board, somewhere around 28%,
Yeah.
something like that. There is a slide buried in this 19 that looks at the car footprint for that. But I found it interesting that, Charlottesville was a little bit more cash in it. But, look at the difference just from first quarter to the third quarter.
And let's put it back on screen there, Judah. Multiple people asking for the slide back on screen.
So what I'm referring to is the price. Look at that jump from 105 to 585. So at the end of the first quarter, the median sales price was 405 for single family detached, no new construction, right? This is what we do all the time, because we don't want to. I learned this word today, by the way, conflate.
Oh, conflate.
Now I
That's a
got to
good
figure
one.
out what it actually means, but I'm working on it. I learned how to actually say it. And now we ended up at the end of the third quarter at 585. And I haven't done the math on that, but
I'd say that's a pretty sizable jump.
it's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit more analysis, I think, I need to say, I'm going to take a look at this on my off time and give you my opinion on it, Keith, but there's something, that's a big delta, and I'm wondering what's going on.
Yeah, and I wish you would, because I triple checked it and quadruple checked it and said, wow, that's about 100 and.
Do we attribute that to upzoning potential?
It could be contributed to Smith, right? So I think that's what Woody is kindly saying. It could be contributed to me. I'm going to, while you guys are going to talk, I'm going to check for the 4th time.
I think you've got these right. You've done these 3 times.
Oh, these numbers are, I'm sure the numbers are correct, but what I'm wondering is what's drawing that first quarter differently than the other 2 quarters. We got to have a little context with that.
Yeah, and what's particularly odd about this, maybe odd's not the right word, is rates increased over that period of time.
Well, they've been north
escalated.
of 6.
Yeah.
Right.
And now we're flirting with 8.
Yeah.
Depending on where you shop, some over 8.
Well, I don't even want to say this out loud, but I was in a meeting yesterday with Dr. Lisa Steravant and a couple other economists. And man, they used a 10 word.
I've been hearing that.
And my question to the team there was, okay, is that changing this? Is that changing this 405 to 585? Is that going to impact the overall market? And of course, nobody really knows, right? We're here trying to make our best guesses at these things. But everybody's kind of looking from that perspective, looking at inventory, the volume of sales and inventory dropping, and the prices still to increase it, which is pretty much what the good doctor said on Monday.
Yep.
Johnny Ornalis, good morning. Woody, do you attribute it to upzoning?
It could be. Again, we need some context, and just looking at raw numbers, it's hard to say exactly what's going on. I will add, though, the amount of cash buyers that we've got. Cash buyers are in a unique position because they can pay more than market value if they want to. So that would really drive. It could drive it in the direction that it's going. So I don't want to say I don't know, but I don't want to conflate the data. It's using Keith's word for the day.
So if you wouldn't mind popping on slide number 7, if you can get to it, that was from Monday. So this is looking at quarters 1, 2, and thank you, Judah. Quarters 1, 2, and 3. So this is the full car footprint, right? This is what we were referring to earlier. This is the full car footprint. It does include single family attached, detached, and condos. It's everything on it, and it only looks at the 30-year fixed conventional versus cash. So, the car footprints are at roughly at 28, and we're looking at 42 last quarter in Charlottesville, and about 36 were cash.
I'd say these numbers are steady, quarter over quarter over quarter. Marginal difference, if
for
any.
the full car footprint.
For the full car footprint, yeah.
And to Woody's point, micro markets matter, details matter. I think what we're trying to do here is just kind of get out an overview of the market and an overview of the car footprint. And on the other side of the hill, frankly, we've got data slides on Keith Smith with Real Talk with Keith Smith in there that folks can look at it that covers all the jurisdictions. But I just kind of wanted to kick today's show off with the good mayor's request. I frankly did not expect to see a 405 to 585 difference. I didn't expect to see that. So maybe some folks out there can chime in and see why they think that's happened.
Multiple people asking for the first slide back on screen, Judah. As they digest the first slide, if we can get that back on for those that are asking.
And be kind. I've only had one cup of coffee today.
And they're asking for us to pick this apart. I'm seeing this in the feed here.
So I just ran some quick math. So between 405 and 585, it's a $180,000 difference. That's a 44% increase. And to Woody's point, that's
in 90 days.
Well, no, more than that. So that was the end of the first quarter, right? So
6 months.
Okay.
6 months.
6 months. 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a short period of time.
Yeah.
Well, actually 9 months, 369.
Well, remember when you're using
End of first quarter.
Yeah.
To the end of third quarter would be 6
So that's
months.
the median.
Yeah.
That's the median sales price for Charlottesville for the first quarter.
Well, remember too, we had a bit of a stall coming out of last year.
I think that's what
and
it is.
when you're doing central tendency statistics, you're going to end up with median is the middle number of all
Yeah.
the transactions. So it could pull it in a direction that makes it appear to be more of a change than it really is.
And why we had the stall coming out of the holidays last year was the sticker shock of rates upticking.
Yeah,
and to
consumers are
Woody's
still getting used to
point, you may see the marketplace getting adjusted to the rates upticking, is kind of the point you're making here.
Well, one of my good friends who's a loan officer, actually ran into him in Wegmans on Sunday, and we were talking about it, and he's telling me that a lot of his customers are acclimating to it. It's the new normal for them, and if they want to buy and sell real estate or refinance, this is what they have to deal with.
I'm hearing the same thing, so if there's any loan officers listening today to see how that goes, I think, everybody's volume has decreased.
Yeah.
And, Judah, these are way too many damn slides, you know that? Have you figured that out yet, Judah?
There's a fair amount of slides right there.
Yeah, well,
You did your research.
I did my homework, it's for days. Slide number 2, right? So slide number 2 is the single-family detached, no new construction. This is the car footprint, so this does not include the other side of the hill. So what that is the median sales price, and to Woody's point, that I think now we need to start looking at averages, but versus the 30-year mortgage. So, you would think, I've overlaid the trend line for the 30-year mortgage on that. You would think that in the third quarter of 2023, the price would actually be down a little bit versus where we're at 7. At that point, it was 7.31% at the end.
And why do you attribute that? Because the rates escalated?
I think Woody's spot on. I think people are getting used to it. People are getting used to maybe this is the new normal, and as the good doctor said, people are buying and selling. We have clients we're helping, and there's life things that are going on, and that's a majority of what's going on now, that folks have to move, right? And there's a little bit of this kind of resettling at this Zoom work from home thing, right? Some folks have to come back. So I just think there's a whole market kind of shift on it. But one would think, and fellas jump in, one would think that as the interest rate went up, sales price would kind of get a little flatter. But I'm not seeing that.
Comments coming in. Woody, you want to touch that?
Yeah, I mean, traditional theory would tell you that when your purchasing power is diminished the way that, because we've effectively doubled over the last 18 months. And you would think that the reaction in the market would be to almost come to a standstill, but it's not been the case. So I would have never thought from a theoretical perspective that we would be where we are right now. But life continues. Babies are still being born. Divorces happen. People need to send their kids to college. So people are cashing out money and they're buying and selling real estate.
So that's where I think if we take a look at that slide number 2 and take a look at that third quarter, there's a third of the buyers, and I'm just rounding the numbers up a little bit depending on the jurisdiction, right? It's 28% across the board. But, let's just make it a simple math example. A third of them are cash. I think that's what's impacting that line versus the sales price. So when there's a third or 28% of that $465,000 medium sales price versus the 7.31 30-year fixed at per the Fed at that point in time, I think that's what's kind of skewing those numbers a little bit.
Laura chimes in. Is it Jerry's point of the population increasing or an influx of wealthy?
Well, I think that's the point I'm trying to say. I think, and I'm going to just made a note to myself, I'm probably going to rerun that slide and pull the cash sales out, and just out of curiosity, see how that line matches the sales price that didn't have cash in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Woody?
Yeah.
Comments coming in here. Is there new inventory coming on the market that could be new construction that could impact or diminish price point?
It's not going to diminish price point by any means. We're going to continue to see an appreciation overall in the market, I think, at least for the foreseeable future.
Thoughts, Keith?
Yeah, so again, my lovely 20-something slides. I have one slide, which I will get to it in a minute, which is number 5.
Slide 5.
So this is the full car footprint, because I've already looked at that. Okay, so let me look at new construction values over the first 3 quarters of 2023 versus the price for for existing homes, and there's a bit of a delta between the sales prices, right? So we're ending the third quarter on an average of 511, and hold on a second, and we're ending the third quarter at 465. So the math difference between 465 and 511. So they're selling, to Woody's point, they're selling for more value, new construction, than existing homes. Look, more is going to be better, but we're a long time away from more.
You guys saw the news yesterday. The National Association of Realtors, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and the National Association of Home Builders all pooled resources together with one signed letter, unified letter, the 3 outfits, to Jerome Powell and the Fed, essentially begging Jerome Powell and the Fed to stop with rate hikes, because the fear from the 3 organizations is a stall in the industry. That made the national headlines there. CPI, we have some numbers coming out tomorrow. We had some numbers come out today. A bit hotter than expected came out this morning. Tomorrow's number is very important, which will help determine what, or at least be one indicator of what Jerome Powell is going to do moving forward. Your thoughts on any of this? What do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, trade organizations are doing what trade organizations do. They're looking out for the benefit of their membership. But I mean, I don't see Powell not doing a hike. I mean, they're getting reaction from the market in the direction that they want it to go. And I mean, I don't want to sound doom and gloom here, but until they are definitely trying to make the market decrease somewhat. I don't know how successful they'll be. I mean, here locally, which what this show really focuses on is the hyper-local markets. We have no indications that we're going to see any change. I mean, Jerry, you always bring up the fact that we've got the the new data science school, we've got the new research facilities coming in, and all these jobs and folks coming in over the next 5 or 6 years. that just puts more stress on us. I just don't see it unless we have a major national economic crisis. I don't see things changing much for us.
What do you think, Keith Smith?
Well, Woody pretty much said it spot on. I mean, this is what they're supposed to do. This is what we pay our dues to do. And there's a little bit of NAR bashing going on around the nation. Just a little bit. Some of it I feel pretty strongly about. But that being said, without that organization, and its particularly lobbying arm, particularly in Virginia, we would have not stayed open during COVID, right? The real estate industry would have been shut down, and just imagine what would have the impacts of the market that would have had if the real estate industry shut down. And I'm going to keep on quoting the good doctor, but per her numbers, 20% of the whole nation's gross domestic product is related to what we're talking about. Here today.
I really respected Lisa Sturtevant on Monday's show, who indicated during the interview that she purchased at these escalated and elevated higher rates. I mean, she made a point to say that.
Yeah.
And that here we have an economist,
like the second one in the country,
literally the bright. She's a PhD, saying, "Look, I bought in this ecosystem."
Sure. And
she made a point to do that.
She made it a point to do that. She added a little bravado to it, like, maybe, the good doctor, did it anyway. But look, it's 100% right. If people need to buy, they need to buy. It's our job for the folks sitting at this table here is to help the buyers and sellers navigate this current, market circumstances. And look. We've all been doing this a long time. Every market's got its own little thing, right? We were talking, 2 years ago about COVID and the impact of COVID and the impact at that point. Now we're kind of in the hangover of COVID. And we will get through the other side of this as we usually, that's what I call it, is we're in a bit of a hangover thing. And I think like all hangovers, it takes, the older you get.
You call this a COVID hangover? Terry Farr giving Woody Fincham some props in Las Vegas, Nevada right now.
He's one of the professors at UNLV in the real estate department. Terry's a good guy.
He's watching the program as we speak. Do you call this a COVID hangover?
I've never heard that term before. I was just chuckling at it because I think it's apropos. No one would have ever anticipated COVID to do what it did to the real estate market. I mean, it put it on steroids. The artificially low rates that we had. It was just a perfect storm, to borrow a bad George Clooney movie. But yeah, I can't disagree.
That wasn't a good movie, right?
I didn't mind that movie. I mean, they all died.
I mean, anything
Not
with
to
Marky,
be a spoiler.
anything with Marky Mark in it, I'm just kind of like,
Mark Wahlberg was in that. He was George's right-hand person.
Yep.
He's 100% right.
It's kind of like the Titanic. You knew how it was going to end.
Very true.
So I think when I refer to it, and actually my better 7-8 said, I wish you wouldn't call it a hangover, but that's how it feels, and it feels like it's a COVID 3% hangover, and those of us who are north of 6-0, hangovers take a lot longer to recover from.
Oh, you're talking 60 years old.
Yeah.
Or a 6-point interest rate.
No,
60 years old.
No. Would be an age thing I was referring to, right? The when you were younger, you were able to recover from a hangover a lot faster than you can at the age of 60. And when you get to an age of 60 plus, you actually get smart enough not to even get one. So, and I think that's what's going on. To just put it as an analogy, we're kind of going through this hangover and relearning things and ending up with a bit of a new reality. I meant to ask the Lisa this the other day, on Monday, but if you take a look at the HUD average over since 1972, it's 7.1%,
right.
The 30-year mortgage. So we're above the norm, the average anyway. I just don't see this interest rate going much below 5 anytime soon.
Terry Farr says, thank you for the kudos, Woody Fincham. Professor Farr in Las Vegas, what's your take on this? Do you see, sir, the rates dropping anytime soon? Do you see us hitting 10%? Do you see the presidential election impacting or changing things? We're a year away from what could be one of the most, how would you characterize the presidential election that's on the horizon, Woody Fincham?
Completely nuts.
Yeah?
You know, I don't like talking politics one way or the other. I'm one of those guys that if you're very liberal, you think I'm a conservative, or if you're very conservative, you think I'm a liberal.
So you're in the center?
Sort of in the center.
Yeah.
But it's going to be an interesting year, that's for sure.
So are we in this ecosystem through 2024 and into 2025? Professor Farr says, I was cautiously optimistic due to the election, but no, I do not see rates dropping anytime soon. That's from an insider right there. Keith Smith, jump in.
Yeah, so I've said this before. I think as far as housing goes, the national politics or the federal side of things, and maybe the good professor will disagree with me.
We have now an econ professor at UVA watching the program.
Both of these professors might disagree with me, but it's been my experience that the federal level doesn't really have a huge impact on housing. It's generally the state and the local levels that have the most impact, and those are the races that I think everybody should be watching closely. I know I am, and I don't know who coined this term, but all politics are local, and you need to go ahead and keep a track on it. The state levels are the folks that are really going to try to impact this. In theory, the Fed is an independent body; it runs separately of everything else, but you really should be keeping whatever state you're watching or listening to this on, your local state and elections coming up.
This question's coming from Grayson. So how long is this market going to be this market? That's what we're talking about right now. Do we clear 2024 and sprint into the spring market of 2025 in this scenario?
I mean, there's no indication that the market's going to have any big swing anytime soon. I think we're going to continue trucking along the way we have over the last year, and again, unless something major happens in the economy,
What about the world?
Well, I mean that affects our economy
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, hopefully we continue to keep things kind of status quo as far as our social issues and all political issues here in our country. But yeah, I mean, a major conflict overseas could definitely affect it.
It looks like we're in the middle of one. So, look, I've said on the show multiple times that this is a 5-10 year correction. The good doctor said a generation before it gets corrected. I don't think it's that long, but I think once interest rates start dropping, I think you're going to start seeing inventory pick back up again. I'm just looking at what came on the market in the last 7 days. I've been tracking it. We're at 64 in our car footprint. I can tell you the last several weeks that was in the 80s, so it just dropped down to 64. I think a lot of that is the holiday season, the winter season. I think is settled in a lot sooner than normal, and I think everybody's in a hurry up and wait mode on it. But Z's coming, millennials coming, data science is coming, unless inventory.
We haven't mentioned the $11 billion from Amazon. Katie Pearl, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Vanessa
Katie.
Parkhill, Dr. John Shabe, Chad Wood, James Wasson, Georgia Gilmer, all watching the program.
James
Travis
is
Hackworth.
watching from England.
Travis Hackworth watching in Danville right now. A lot to cover on the program right now. How about this comment that is coming the feed? Is this going to drive more demand to the rental markets locally in Charlottesville and Central Virginia? Woody, do you want to start with that one? That's a very good question right there from Spencer.
Well, I mean, it really comes down to what people need to do. I think we're going to continue to see more stress on the rental market, meaning, rent's going to go up, particularly if we can't build more homes. I mean, folks that are coming here for new jobs and things of that nature, they've got to live somewhere. And if they can't buy, they're going to rent because they have to be here. I mean, I've got several friends that work at some of the GSEs like Fannie and Freddie on the appraisal side, and they all live somewhere else, but all own real estate and right around the campuses for both of those entities up in Northern Virginia. And so they'll come in and stay for a while and do that. Will we see that kind of transient housing here? Probably not. We don't have the supply for it, but. we don't have enough to meet the demand. And with more students coming in, we talked about midterm rentals and short-term rentals, on Monday, which I got a couple of phone calls about midterm rentals.
Really?
Because I brought it up. But students revenue much better than normal long-term leases. So, if the landlords and investors start going in that direction, it takes even more viable single-family housing off the market.
The response for Keith seems like rental price points are upticking.
Yeah, so
thank you, Spencer.
Thank you, Spencer. I haven't had a chance to dig into that. Poor Judah hates me about it at the moment. I don't want to throw many more slides on it, but we can take a look at that. Unfortunately, Carr and Paragon does not do a great job of the rental market. I will jump in from more of a macro perspective. Woody, did you attend the session that the chief economist from the National Association?
Dr. Yoon? Yeah, I was there.
No, from the Builders Association when you did that.
Said I do that every year.
So it was interesting. And I've heard this at the CEO event and from other conversations. There seems to be a cooling down on the multifamily side of things.
They were built.
So you want to take a dive into that?
I mean,
for a second?
nationally, it's been a problem. Here locally, I don't think we've got enough.
No, we do not have enough.
Well, we don't have enough, but I think this interest rate that Powell's, they're going to bump it. I'm confident of it. It impacts that drastically.
Sure.
That market drastically.
Well, let's be specific here. It impacts new construction in multifamily. It does not impact existing in multifamily. Existing in multifamily that's already built will see values escalate.
Got it.
New construction will be impacted because debt service becomes more expensive.
So I'm looking at a growth, how are we going, my thinking is talking about is how we're going to grow beyond this existing inventory, right? And the multifamily side of things, I think locally you're going to start seeing the brakes getting hit because unless these are folks that are doing new projects that are cash, which is usually not the case.
Right.
These rates increases impact. It also impacts development projects, again, unless they're cash on it. And those are all few and far between that do that. So you're going to start seeing a cool down. And ultimately, I think that's what the Fed wants, right? The Fed wants new construction, wants the housing market to somehow or another hit the brakes a little bit, but it's clearly not happening. Volume is happening, but value is not happening.
James Watson says he's in Charlottesville.
Oh.
Your niece is in England.
I thought I saw pictures of him in England. Hey, James, how you doing?
Brandon Ertl watching the program. Couple of media outlets watching the show as we speak. I'll throw it back to Woody as Spencer is asking us to dig deeper on this. He sees the rental market, the asking points upticking on apartments.com. And he's seeing the inventory available for rent on this particular website diminishing in options.
Yeah.
So he's percolating and he's asking for the panel's opinion on this, that the demand for rentals is upticking here locally, and it could have an adverse effect of what's doing with the for sale market.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, the two things are interrelated. You can find correlation there all day long. When people are going to come moving into a market like this, like when my wife and I moved here when I was became the deputy assessor in Albemarle, we rented a piece of property for 3 years before we bought. We weren't sure if Charlottesville was going to be a destination that I would spend the rest of my career at. Thank
you for making that decision to stay here.
We love Charlottesville.
We do like Woody.
And decided to buy, and that helped. But that's where folks coming in for these new jobs are going to probably start as rental markets. If you've got your kids enrolled somewhere, you may want to spend the first year here, kind of as a remote. Working away from your family and then moving your family here when you can. Because my first housing when I got here before I moved the family up, I was living in one of the quads over at Eagles Ridge or Eagles Landing.
Eagles Landing, yeah.
Yeah, it was weird, sharing space with a bunch of other students, but I'm in my late 30s at that point. So, but yeah, it was neat.
Michael Coyle watching in Lafayette Hill, Pennsylvania right now of the Coyle Group. The appraisers watch the program when the Professor Woody Fincham is on the show as we speak. Keep the questions coming in, guys. If you have any questions for the panel, relay them live on air. A boatload of realtors watching the program. Let's highlight Kelly Jackson on the show, Bob Yarborough on the show, Dr. Karen Wolf, Dr. Downey watching the program, Jesse Rutherford watching the program, Donna Price, Peter Krebs of the Piedmont Environmental Council, Ray Cadell, Andre Xavier, Tripp Stewart, who owns a boatload of real estate watching the program. Keith Smith, jump in.
So, again, I just looked real quickly on what's available in Paragon, right, on apartments. Again, it's not a plethora, another big word, of, I have no idea what it means, but it sounded good.
Good job.
So there's 38 total available for lease on Paragon, right? And it's everything from detached to
There's
multifamily.
38 available.
38.
You should highlight it. You hear that?
38.
That is a
but-
minuscule number.
But that's in Paragon,
Right.
right?
Apartments.com is the one you want to check.
Yeah, and I don't have quick access to that, so I just wanted to do some
I
quick
can give
access.
it a little whirl.
But what I wanted to bring up is that there's 38 if you were in Paragon and if you were going to use a real estate professional to help in the city of Charlottesville. The average is 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, 1,300 square feet, renting for an average of $22.32. They're asking $22.32.
That's a lot of money.
2-bed, 1.5 baths. This is the average, right? I'm just looking up what Paragon aggregates for me quickly and just reading it raw right off the sheet here.
The viewers and listeners are sharing links to rentals in the market with dozens of them over $3,000
Oh,
per
yeah.
month.
Yeah, I can see that.
In the Charlottesville metro area, over $3,000 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, and we'll have to kind of figure out a way to do this for another show. It's just difficult to aggregate that. It's kind of like having the commercial conversation, right? There's no singular location like residential sales have on. Ooh, his eyes just popped up.
I mean, it's flowing. It's flowing right now.
So it's much like commercial, right? You know, some of it is closely held listings and sales, and some of them are at arm's length, some of them are not on commercial. So as far as rentals go, it's difficult to aggregate that all in there. And I'm seeing Woody looking at apartments.com.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the market in the city, but you know, we did a package earlier this year of 20-some rentals, and we've just bid another one that we're going to get at 47 for one owner group. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of privately held stuff, and they're all going through local management companies, which they don't share that information.
That's exactly right. That's the point I'm trying to make.
So this is an interesting question that's come in the feed.
Thanks, Woody.
This is a very good question right here that I would like to unpack. Thomas, thank you for this, and I understand, I know Thomas well. The man has a crap load of real estate that he owns. And he says, for the panel, with an expensive purchase environment for existing or new construction, our prediction is this is going to drive even more demand to the rental market and the investor market, especially those of us that can pay cash to purchase properties and bring rentals to market that are ready from day one, clean, organized, well-marketed, and appealing by location. Please talk about this.
Woody, you want to jump in?
I mean, if I had a bunch of cash sitting in a pile right now, I would be looking at this upzoning and as an investor going in and buying anything I can that's got enough land area to add some accessory dwelling units to it. And those things revenue really well. You already got your land. It's relatively a lower cost thing to get into and to do compared to buying raw land and building brand new. So, I mean, that's where I would really be looking, which, we've seen some movement in our office, with some of our clients over the last 6-7 months.
So I know that we'll leave the who out of this because they've asked me to do this, but we just closed, Monday on exactly that. Right kind of on the edge of, let's call it in the Johnson Village area of a piece of property. It's cash, and they're actually going to put an apartment in the basement, keep an apartment upstairs.
Right.
Right now, frankly, it's actually zoned R2, so they can do it by right at the moment. But the goal is when the upzoning happens, they'll put an ADU in the back, auxiliary dwelling unit, because it took us a long time to actually find this property, because it meets all the criteria. It's easier to develop and build on the back end of it. But yeah, and it's cash. It was all cash.
Yeah.
Thomas follows. Our portfolio is full. We are unable to keep up, and the waiting list is getting longer.
Yeah. So this is
John Blair, welcome to the show.
Yeah, so this funnel that we're in is just going to get tighter and tighter and tighter as we go to the bottom of the funnel. And, I'm on public record of saying this upzoning, I'm in favor of more housing, I'm in favor of doing that, but this will be a bell curve. It'll prices and availabilities will kind of will increase, and there'll be a while before we get to the top of that bell curve to start coming down. There has to be a certain amount of mass produced, in other words, a number of units, before it impacts value and that number starts dropping down, barring any unforeseen thing that nobody knows
Right.
about.
I think the impact it's going to have is it's going to make things way more expensive in the short term.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
And I think the inventory that's going to be created from upzoning potential is going to be, as Keith said, a very slow slog as it comes to market. Because if you're going to create new inventory, you're likely going to finance it. And who's going to finance it in a market where interest rates are at, financing for new construction, especially speculation, you're looking at a rate that it'll be over 10%.
Yeah, it's generally 1 to 2 points over prime.
Right.
I borrowed enough of it in my life.
So you're talking over 10% there.
Yeah. So the cash, cash is king. The folks that have the ability to buy cash are going to do it. The bell curve, there's going to be two bell curves, I think. Bell curve one is going to be valuations or sales price. It's going to increase rapidly. The smaller bell curve is actually going to be inventory, the impact of the inventory. That's not going to run parallel, the bell curve of inventory versus the bell curve of price. But there's some undetermined period of time. Eventually they're going to catch up and then start coming down.
Kate Schartz, the Queen of Ivy, watching the program. Lauren Keswick watching the program. Spencer Pushard, hello. Marquise Johnson, Bellamy Brown, Mozzie of Real Estate 3, welcome to the program. Josh Tracy of Real Estate 3, welcome to the program. Mark McKinney of the Crozet Advisory Committee, welcome to the program. Juan Sarmiento, welcome to the show. Atlanta's in the house through Cicely Gay on the program right now.
That's one of my alum from high school.
Giving Woody Fincham some props. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's a topic you want us to cover, put it in the feed. We will relay it live on air. Multiple people have been taken aback by the 10% number that Keith threw out earlier today. Do you want to go down that road? He's talking 10% on a 30 fix with potentially good credit, ladies and gentlemen.
And I'm stuttering because, but there are discussions out there that there could climb to 10%. We brought this up, 6 or 9 months ago, if I remember correctly, that, there is a possibility of that. And I think we had a discussion about, if it goes to 10%, will that negatively impact the market? Look, I think a lot has to happen before we go to 10%. I think we're going to hit 8%. I don't know, Jerry, if any...
We're at it.
We're pretty much there.
Yeah.
I don't know if any mortgage brokers are watching.
Michael Buchensky, jump in.
Yeah. So I don't know if the current 30-year mortgage rate has already baked in the next projected increase from the Fed. They've baked that into the market. If that's the case, then we might be hovering around 8% plus or minus for the rest of the year. It's just my guess at this point. If it hasn't, we run the risk of going north. 2 years ago, I had a conversation with a president of the bank and said, watch out, 9%'s coming.
And he was right.
It was a she.
She was right.
And I poo-pooed it at the time. And was along the lines of everybody else, it'll never go above 4%. Well, I was wrong. So, a lot of this is crystal ball stuff, which we should break out.
Well, it's clear, and we can't see into the future. It would appear that Jerome Powell wants to keep rates elevated for an extended period of time to make sure that he truly squashes this and not make the mistake of previous Fed chairs where they've ripped the Band-Aid off too soon, which led to more inflation or persisting inflation.
Yeah, so historically, they put the Band-Aid on too late, right?
And then rip it off too soon.
They rip it off too soon.
Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't eradicate or alleviate the inflationary pressures.
So the couple of professors that are watching, and if they can think about this, it would be great. One of the conversations we had with Lisa on Monday is from my perspective, this kind of feels like a 1980s real estate market a little bit, and I'm just curious how they read on that.
A lot of folks are making that call where home values did not drop, they escalated.
Yeah, but
in
not
the
a lot,
80s.
not a big percentage.
They escalated, and they're comparing it to the 80s as opposed to 2008,
Yeah.
where we had a glut of inventory and values actually dropped.
Yeah, as one who lived through the 80s and bought their first home in the 80s, it feels more like that to me than anything.
What do you think, Woody Fincham?
I mean, I'd offer some perspective, but I was still playing with G.I. Joes in the 1980s. I mean, looking back, what I know about the period.
I think I just got cold old.
At the end of the 80s, the S&L crisis
Yeah.
happened. So we reacted probably in not a great fashion as a country as a whole. I mean, the creation of licensure in the appraisal field was a result of how badly the savings and
I did
loans.
not know that.
Yeah, and we became 1991 is when we started doing licensing nationally.
Really?
So
I did not
it was
know
a
that.
result of S&L because you'd have folks like loan officers at the bank would go out, take a Polaroid picture of a building, and then write a value on the back of it, and that was the appraisal. It wasn't not a lot of good diligence going on then.
And I thought 2004, 5, and 6 was bad. I did not know that. All I was thankful to get 18% for a mortgage and close on a house. How I got there, I couldn't give her a
Well,
darn.
yeah, the market always reacts. It was interesting to read about how many people were holding back. The sellers were holding back seconds, and people taking assumptions on mortgages and things
I think
like
that's
that.
coming back.
It very well may.
I talked to, and I believe he's watching the program right now, won't utilize his name, he is, about assumable mortgages. And assumable mortgages are a tricky position for the mortgage broker because there's not a ton of revenue to be made in an assumable mortgage for said broker. And if the assumable mortgage does not go according to plan, the transaction, the broker then has to decide, is this little profit that's on
Worth
the
it.
table worth it if this deal implodes?
And the second part of that is most of your loan documents won't allow it.
Yeah, so the assumable mortgage, according to this individual,
Yeah.
does not believe it's going to have a ton of momentum, although I'm seeing some properties on CAR, on the
Yeah.
local MLS, being marketed in the first and second sentences as assumable mortgage potential.
So
Are you seeing that?
I am, but I may be wrong, and I have not done a detailed dive into that. And again, the loan officer should help us with this. I think VA is one of the few
Yes.
that are
I was
assumable.
getting ready to mention that.
Right. I think everything else is going to be really.
The VA does stuff that a lot of folks don't do because they have the best interest of the veteran borrower at heart. I've been a VA panel appraisal for many years, and I know the chief appraiser, Jim Heslett, great guy, old sergeant from the Marine Corps, guy, just a great guy. But
Must be really awesome.
Anytime you talk to him, it's always about putting that veteran
Yeah.
borrower
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And assumptions allow someone in a position where they need to unload the piece of real estate to get it over to someone who can continue to have a productive note. And I was smiling a little bit when you said
I noticed that.
about the mortgage companies not making enough money. I mean, good God, they have a license to print money most of the time. So I mean, your profit range is going to be a little bit lower on something like that, but in the end, I've not seen any bad data saying that they're hurting for revenue right now.
And particularly the big banks.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the and it was interesting because a lot. Dr. Lisa Steravant, Yoon, and a couple other economists I'm talking to, this interest rate increase might be most impactful on the community banks.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Well, I have several community bank clients right now, and
Yeah.
they are a desert for work right now, except for the few that are still doing a few pre-construction things, and then people using commercial lines of credit through their local bank to take care of consolidating debt and things like that.
I mean, it's no doubt it's going to impact the community banks.
Correct, and the conversation was an interesting conversation. This was in D.C. around a cocktail that, some of these bigger banks again, this is cocktail talk around a bar, got kind of a heads up that interest rates were going to get raised because they had regulators in their offices on a regular basis, whereas the community banks didn't, and I think some of them got caught with their proverbial pants when these interest rates started jerking, going up. So we shall see, but it was an interesting conversation, to say the least.
This question's come in. How is this going to impact the commercial market for Woody specifically on Twitter?
I mean, that's not really my forte. That's more of a Heather Placer question. Heather was on the show a couple months ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know a lot of commercial appraisers right now that are very slow in their work. So I don't think it's had a real positive impact for folks.
I have a client that we're working on something in Goochland, and about a year ago it went from commercial appraisers of I'll get to you in 6 years to I can be there next week, and the prices are coming down a little bit.
Yeah.
Commercial appraisals tend to be in the many thousands of dollars. If not tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the property.
The follow of this was on Twitter. Come refinancing with the short-term commercial. To Keith's point, the commercial banks that are holding the bag on any paper with some of these buildings that need to be refinanced are in a tough position.
Yeah, because they're coming up.
Yeah. That's what the point on Twitter is.
Yeah, they're coming up.
You want to highlight or unpack what they're talking for the other viewers and listeners?
Yeah, so commercial loans are not 30-year loans, right? They are
5, 7, 10, and they reset depending on what the interest rate environment is.
They reset, and so think of them in the retail market as an arm, right? That's basically what it is. Now, your paint, right? It's an arm, right? You've got it for 5-year arm, 7-year arm. At some point, you're going to have to either refinance it or pay it off, right? Well, that's the same thing in the commercial, right? It's either 5, 7, 10. It's whatever you negotiate, and then they get reset, whatever that time is. Typically, they're based on some sort of 30-year amortization, so the monthly payment is lower, right? It's not a 7-year IAM amortization. It's typically a 30-year, but they get reset. And as these things start coming up, that's why people in the commercial business that I'm talking to are getting nervous, because some of these that got refinanced when it was 2%, right? They're going to have to hit the refi button at some point.
The follow-up question to that is, what will come of these buildings where the owners cannot carry or afford the debt service?
A lot of commercial debt is held by the smaller institutions. They're holding the paper. There's no secondary market for them to sell it on, like you see with residential real estate.
So what Woody is saying is the building is the collateral for the regional and smaller banks, so they will then have the decision if they want to take the keys or take over ownership of the building, because that is the collateral, or restructure.
They rework them.
And rework them, which I would bet that's probably what's going to happen, because I don't know a lot of the smaller regional banks want some of these buildings on their balance sheets when office clearly has exposure.
No lenders want to be in the real estate
That's
business.
what I'm saying.
They don't want to hold.
Oh, they're lousy at it too.
Yeah.
So you may see the folks that are in this position almost play a game of poker with the lender to see, okay, do you want to take this over? And a lot of, and to highlight this, because I got some colleagues in this space now, a lot of the buildings don't have the same occupancy rates that they had when the rates were secured at the 2, 3, 4, 5% environment. The vacancies have uptick. So you have, I don't want to call it a perfect storm, but you have values of the buildings potentially dropping. At the same time, vacancies have upticked. At the same time, debt service is becoming more expensive because the rates on said debt service are increasing.
That's why this timing is everything, and that's why this conversation that the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors are having with this developer incentive program, which I'm moderating. The low-hanging fruit is starting to look at these commercial zonings to see if they can allow residential in it.
Yeah, Boston just did that. That was the biggest city I'm aware of right now, that they're allowing flexibility with office to allow you to convert it over to condos and things of that nature.
So take a ride into Scott's Addition in Richmond. Now, it's different. This is industrial. That's industrial,
Yeah,
right?
that was set up for an easier conversion, Scott's Addition,
Absolutely.
because it was a box.
And I just was there this weekend, and if you want to stumble from brewery to brewery to brewery and have some good beer,
That
and
place is awesome.
they tore down all these old factories and
Right.
built these multi-story apartments. Try to find parking down there, by the way. The good news is our daughter lives about 1.5 miles away, so we walked.
You guys walked?
We walked over. So real quick, back on the assumable question. So I just took a quick look at the car footprint, single-family detached, no new construction, in all the jurisdictions. This roughly was 1,800 sales year to date. Only 144 of them were VA. So that the number of that can actually do that is pretty low.
So you're basically saying that the assumable is not really going to drive the needle. That's what you're saying.
No, but Jerry, again, to steal our wonderful...
Silver buckshot, silver bullet.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it didn't...
Anything helps, is what you're saying.
Well, it wasn't a silver bullet that got us here. It was a silver buckshot, right? There was multiple
I'd
things
say
that...
COVID was a silver bullet.
Well, yeah, but there was all different pieces of that in it that kind of caused it to go up. You know, the fact that it takes 6 years to get a development approved, right? You know, there's all kinds of different pieces of the silver buckshot that got us here. It's going to take the same thing to get us out. So any individual item will help the whole, in my opinion.
So what are the silver buckshots we have? We have upzoning. We have local government eradicating red tape, or at least trying to. We have assumable mortgages. We have
You're going to have a small amount of foreclosures come into the market. which
small amount of foreclosures.
I think you're going to see the mom and pop, small number rentals kind of get into the market of selling their homes and moving on it. I know I'm in discussions with some folks putting homes on the market that are doing that because they just don't want to deal with it's costing them too much money for replacements and so forth and so on. So that's going to happen. It's just going to be a lot of little things that will take a long time to move that needle forward.
How about the policing of the short-term rentals?
You know, my oldest daughter and son-in-law are coming down for a weekend this weekend without kids,
Oh, so
They-
they're not staying at your house?
and they wanted to get a hotel room.
Okay.
Couldn't find a hotel room in the city of Charlottesville that didn't have a high four, a 450, 445. You know, that's couldn't find it. Closer you got to UVA, the more that number went. And she says, and she's a makeup artist in New York City, and she goes, I don't need an effing. You can fill in the blanks on the effing. I don't effing pay that for Manhattan prices.
Well, interesting. The better half and I are going to Manhattan, the Big Apple in January.
Yeah.
For an extended stay.
Good for you.
I'm going to go up to watch the Tournament of Champions, and she's going to catch up with some of her friends up there. And if you look at the prices for hotels in Manhattan, they are now 6, 7, and 8s per night. And
Yeah,
a
but
lot
that's-
of that has to do
Where
with...
in Manhattan? Downtown?
I mean, we
on the
we wanna-
around Central Park.
We want to be
east.
in a nice spot.
Yeah, the east side. Yeah.
If you look at what's happening in Manhattan, a lot of that is tied to political pressures
Sure.
of housing folks in hotels. And I'm sure we've all followed those storylines. But the hotel shortage is something that's common
So I know
in a lot of jurisdictions.
Well, I know firsthand because of being on the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. We look at this, depending on specifically who you talk to at any given time. We're somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 hotel rooms short just to balance out. That's in the city of Charlottesville. That's in our region, in that end of it. But look, if I go to Manhattan and I'm staying downtown Manhattan by Central Park or on the east side of Manhattan or whatever, I'm expecting to spend that kind of money. Charlottesville spending almost that same amount of
It's
money
bananas.
is bananas.
This for
So they're staying with us. Is the short,
staying with you.
Is the short answer.
Okay.
Unless I paid for the hotel rooms and I said, why don't you stay with us?
Brian Brockman watching the program. He says, I'm watching the show in behind, so not in real time. For Woody specifically, he mentioned assessments with jurisdictions are trailing. Can he go deeper down that, how much they're trailing, and why the assessments could be used as a value barometer for homes come market?
So if you're using assessments to try to do a barometer on what the market value would be, I would suggest to you not to do that. They do trail, but it's a matter of perspective. They are statutorily required to do their assessment as of a specific date. So because of that, and because both Charlottesville and Albemarle, they reassess every piece of property in their jurisdictions once a year. And so they have a limited staff. Charlottesville, I think, has 4 or 5 people, and then you get over to Albemarle, there might be 10, 11 people on the staff. They're doing, in Albemarle, that's 46,000 parcels that they have to reassess every year. So they have to stop at some point to start doing the assessment. And when they do that, by the time the 2023 values that went into effect in July 1st of this year, they were finishing that up at the beginning of the fall last year. So they were using market data that could be as much as a year to even 18 months old. So it's always going to trail. So anytime you've got an appreciating market, they're always going to appear lower for the most part. There's always exceptions to this. And when you're in a depreciating market, you're always going to have higher assessments than the market may be able to support as of that effective date. So the date of the valuation is really why that perspective it can be misleading. When I first came to Albemarle, over 10 years ago, this was the first jurisdiction I ever worked in. That's when the market was starting to go back up from the Great Recession. We were actually having taxpayers calling in complaining that their assessments were too low because there was that old perspective that folks would go, well, I need my assessment to be higher because people are going to try to negotiate because the assessment's lower than what we should be able to sell it for. That blew my mind.
That blows my mind because they're basically saying tax me more.
Yep.
And then the response to that would be a resourced and sophisticated realtor can explain to the seller, no, this is an assessment and not a true value. This is the actual value through the CMA of your house.
Actually, you want that.
You want that, I know. That's why a lot of people who appeal assessments.
Except in Fluvanna County, because my tax assessed value was way above my market value, but we contested it and won.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're also dealing
I
with...
brought my Uncle Vinny with me too. But
when you get into the rural counties like Fluvanna, and this is an attack on our leadership in Fluvanna. I live in Fluvanna. I love the county.
They're not local assessors.
But no, they're third parties, and they are hired because they are the lowest bidder to do what they're doing.
That's exactly right. But it's important because we do the show almost in the beginning of every year or the tail end of every year, right? When assessments come out, people don't know you can contest these.
Yes.
Right? And that's when you reach out to us or Woody or whoever, and you go ahead and do that. And every time they come out, I do a couple dozen of them. They're usually the same people, right? And there's some new folks, and I go ahead and do an assessment for them, give it to them, and they contest it, and they win.
Yeah.
So, it's just, it's never good. I've been doing this for 3 decades. You never compare tax assessed versus market value.
Right.
It just never works out that way.
His follow-up on that would mean, and I'm responding to it, so does that mean we can expect come 2024 to pay more taxes on our home because the market is, he says, elevating? I think a different word would be appreciating or values are increasing.
Right. Well, it's a good thing. The market's increasing. Your investment in your property is going up. That's always a good thing from that perspective. However, do remember that the assessment isn't your tax rate. Your tax rate's set by the politicians that you elect into office, and every year they take the projected assessment and they forecast a budget off of that. So, whether the taxes go up or go down is dependent upon how the jurisdiction wants to handle that.
There it is.
So if you go back and look at future shows, I did a slide, poor Judah, I did a slide with triangles showing that this is a four-sided triangle. Way to go, Smith. A 3-sided triangle of it, that there's the evaluation, the budget, and then the tax rate, and then that equates to how much cash you actually pay.
I love
But
it.
the bottom line is, the property values are going up. We just proved that in the city of Charlottesville. Your taxes will go up proportionately.
100%. Why don't I ask this, because I'm seeing it on the feed here. Do you expect the values to continue to increase? I think you've been on record by saying they'll increase, but not the rate that they've increased during
And
the
I think I'm
pandemic.
probably wrong. I think I'm wrong. I think it's going to increase more than what I thought.
I think it's going to be a double-digit year-over-year increase.
We keep cash buyers at the level that we have them at right now. Cash buyers can pay more.
Well, I'm going to do that analogy. I think pulling cash out, I'm curious on how that's going to match. But we've got...
Well, how about unpack this for the viewers and listeners? I know the answer, but I think it's important for you to unpack it. Cash buyers at the rate that they're buying now, why that's going to potentially lead to greater valuation increases year over year. Explain that to them.
Well, the market's very reactive. So consumers will see a property in their subdivision go for higher than anything they've ever seen or that they thought might be possible right now, even by a little margin. Then that becomes the, what's the word I'm looking
Barometer,
for?
the comp,
Yeah,
the benchmark, the
everybody-
expectation.
Everybody's like, hey, you can use, that's the new normal now. We can sell it for more. I mean, I just did a pre-listing consultation for an
You
agent.
should talk how that works a little.
Yeah, sure. But, there was one sale in that subdivision. We actually did the appraisal on it. It sold for $50,000, and this was 2 years ago, higher than it should have.
At that time.
Yeah, and because there was an appraisal gap contingency, so they decided to overpay for it. Nothing in that subdivision has closed at that amount since. But when potential listings are being looked at by consumers and the agents are coming out, and they're like, all the consumers are going, well, that sale sold for this much.
Yeah.
So that means my property's worth more. It's like, it doesn't work that way really. Particularly as the market's now, consumers are starting to look at things a little more discerning than they were even a year ago. But talking about the service, Keith, I mean, a lot of times when agents are dealing with difficult consumers, you can do your CMA and they may not agree with you. Sometimes we'll have folks call us up and say, hey, can you do an appraisal for us? And we do them at different levels. We'll do them from a desktop perspective to a full assignment where we're going out, measuring, inspecting the whole deal. That one started as a desktop. The consumer was not happy with the square footage that we came back with on it. And I had actually appraised that property they were talking about putting on the market previously when they purchased it. So we had measured it originally, and then the tax assessors got it at this amount, that we've got it at this amount, relatively similar numbers. So a desktop valuation ended up me going on site and actually measuring the property because, the consumer was like, well, it's not right. I know we've got more space than that.
So how did this end?
I don't know that they were happy with what we had to
Well,
tell
I'm sure
them.
of that.
Whether or not it was actually listed at what amount, I haven't looked, to be honest with you.
Got it. Well, that's a great service, and as the world is starting to shift a little bit, it's a great asset. I recommend folks all the time, if they don't see the number the same as we do at that point, is to engage a professional like yourself to go ahead and do that. Look, can you repeat the question again?
Which one?
The last one.
About trailing, how assessments are trailing, or trailing indicator of values and not true values, and can we expect taxes to increase for our homes in the coming years? And then the follow-up to that was, are you expecting single-digit appreciation like you've said in previous shows versus double-digit appreciation?
Yeah, so I think we've got 2 months left between now and the end of the year. I was thinking that we're going to be seeing probally in the single digits.
I think you said 3 to 6%.
I said 3 to 6%, and I'm much like I was wrong that we're going to stay at 4% 30-year fixed. I think I'm going to be wrong on this one. I think you're going to see low double digits, but it'll be in the double digits. And it's interesting.
And it's important to highlight this. That's compound appreciation. We had year-over-year appreciation according to the Q2 CAR report, that it was in Albemarle County 11 to 12% in Albemarle County. Mm-hmm. So that would be compounded appreciation.
Yeah. So again, at the beginning of the year, we're going to take a harder look at this, Woody, and yourself and myself, and figuring out a way to kind of break this down in a digestible way.
I'm looking at some data that I ran this morning, and just looking at the last 12 months, this is Albemarle County, no new construction, I'm excluding anything over $1 million and anything over 10 acres in this particular analysis because I wanted to get more of the median or middle class.
He wanted to get data points that were very tight to each other.
Yeah, so I'm double digit right now looking at that
In
delta.
Albemarle County.
Yep.
And that's third quarter 2023 versus third quarter 2022?
That's as of today.
10 to 12 months ago to now.
And you're at what, 11%?
10.5%, 11%. I'm doing this in my head, so but about that much. Yeah.
So it's staying consistent, at least, on that end of it. I think.
And I don't think we truly have not seen the influences of big time population influx in a very short term that's coming.
But I may be wrong, and some of the other real estate agents watching can chime in. I think you're going to see the axis of volume of sales start dropping substantially now.
You're going to say that again?
So what you're going to do is, I think the number of transactions are going to start plummeting even more than what they're doing. So if you take a look at that trend line is going to start taking a dive to the bottom on it. I think you're going to start seeing, meanwhile, the prices are going to go up on it, but you're going to see, I think, this tightening of sales volume, and which will be matched to inventory going forward. But I think you're going to see that number start dropping. I'm curious.
You buy that, Woody?
Yeah, it tracks with me. I don't disagree with it at all.
Well, all you got to do is have conversations with loan officers and real estate agents and appraisers. I know you guys are picking up on your business, but you can just see the volume of business. The conversation is, we're down. I expected to be about 30% off this year. I'm going to quite not make that number. We're going to be a little bit less than that, which is good on it. But this time last year, I anticipated a volume drop of about 30%. I think we're going to be higher than that overall.
Our mortgage lending is right at 30% down.
Right, yeah, there you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at 11:30. Time flies when you're having fun. Woody Fincham, maybe some closing thoughts for those that are watching.
Thanks for having me on again, guys. It's always fun to get on here and kind of cut it up and talk real estate. Just want to let everybody out there watching know, if there's anything our firm can do to help you, we're more than happy to make ourselves available. I know the market is difficult to read for some folks, and consumers can be hard to deal with sometimes on the agent side. Once again, I'll mention the pre-listing stuff that we do, but we're doing a lot of consulting work and valuation work for private individuals as well, estate planning, things of that nature, and we're always happy to get that work, and it's actually our favorite work to do. So if we can help you, please reach out.
So thank you, Woody. As always, it's a pleasure, and thank you for agreeing to come on a second time this week. We spent a lot of time talking to the good doctor on Monday, and I really wanted to take a dive into that beautiful brain of yours on the local market. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to doing this again next month, and we take a look at because we're going to do month over month, and then at the end of the year or the beginning of next year to see who's right here.
Yeah, I've got some new stats I'm going to run for you too.
I just got a chill at my back.
I'm really interested in withdrawns and removed listings and what's actually going on with that. I think we're probably going to see more of those.
Woody Fincham, Fincham & Associates, Keith Smith, Yes Realty Partners, Judah Wickower. Guys, thank you kindly for joining us.
Judah, thanks again, man.
Absolutely. That's Real Talk with Keith Smith, archived online at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining us on a Wednesday. Take care, everyone. Excellent work. Good job, boys. They'll tell us when the mics are off and the cameras are off.